You're really putting your foot in your mouth here.
If we were recording in person, I would put my foot in your mouth just to hear you stop talking. Welcome back, citizens of the Niro Nation, to our hero De Niro, the only podcast that is watching and recapping Robert De Niro's entire filmography in random order. I'm Mike, and with me as always is my co-host Mike.
So excited to be here.
And today we're actually breaking format to give back to our listeners, the great citizens of the Niro Nation. That's right, this is our 30th episode, and we're turning it into a Mailbag Spectacular. We're going to take this as an opportunity to listen to mail that you've sent over the last few weeks, and I'm very excited to do so.
Why'd you open your beer?
Listen, I forgot, okay?
We were waiting to
yes.
do. All right, I'm gonna open my beer too. Did you open it in front of the mic at least?
No, I'm just gonna say it. We have a couple of beers to drink during this episode, and unfortunately I wasn't thinking properly and cracked mine open before I could sit down at the microphone. So Mike, what do you have? What are you drinking?
I have a Peroni. I don't know if loyal listeners will have ever had a Peroni. It's an Italian beer. It's got kind of a stank to it that I think is probably objectively bad, but I've sort of grown to like after drinking a few dozen of them over the past few years. So I was going to bring up a Modelo, but I mentioned to Mike before we started recording that Caroline is downstairs making tacos, and there was only one Modelo left in the fridge. So I figure we'll power through this Peroni until the tacos are ready, and then we'll break open a nice Cerveza Modelo for tacos in the second half of this episode.
Wow, that's really interesting stuff. I have a Genesee Brewing Ruby Red Kolsch, just in time
Beautiful
for summer.
Beer.
Oh yeah.
Wish we could have heard you open it. All right, I'm gonna open mine now. I don't know how audible that will have been. I guess we'll see when we listen to the recording. But it's a bottle, so
he has to do it close to the microphone.
It was literally, I don't know if you saw, but it was literally right up against the microphone.
Cheers.
It just doesn't make that much noise. Cheers when you open a bottle.
So the way this episode is going to work, we have a selection of fantastic letters from the citizens of the Niro Nation that we've both had a chance to review ahead of time, give a little thought to how we want to respond. But I have a little surprise for you, my co-host Mike. I came up with a few burning questions of my own that will be a total surprise to you. I'm going to put you on the spot every so often. I hope you're ready for it.
Sure, I'm ready.
Oh yeah. Boy. This is fantastic. This is going to be a celebration of the nice little community that we've built over the last 30 weeks. Kind of hard to believe. I feel like we've made so much progress as podcast hosts.
It's funny. We said that when we recorded the 20th episode, and now I go back and listen to episodes from around the 20th episode, and I'm like, oh, this shit's fucking terrible. And so, kudos to us for recognizing back at the 20th episode that as much better as we'd gotten, there still was so many ways for us to improve, technically, in terms of the way we're doing the hosting. We continue to improve with every episode, and I'm proud to be a part of this project.
I think there's a lot to look forward to. I think listeners should notice some improved audio quality starting this episode. I'm very excited about that, even if no one else can tell the damn difference. You just have to stay hungry, stay humble, stay grinding. Actually, oh God, before we get into the letters, you might want to hear a little update on my TikTok algorithm. I used to be a big member of Sopranos TikTok, and unfortunately that has gone away from me. I do my weekly TikTok checks, and my feed now, it's 50% stand-up comedy clips, which I love. That's kind of why I keep coming back to the app. 20%, thirst trap, whatever, generic, stupid content, who cares? But then the remaining 20%. This is incredible. I did not know this kind of content existed. Like Sigma Male, grind set kind of motivational content?
I do.
Well, it's like that, but these are AI-generated voiceovers. And
I love that AI-generated
voiceover
voice.
No.
It's so funny to me.
But It is a specific voice. These are all in Bane's voice. I'm not kidding. It is insane. And here's the problem. They're so funny to me that I keep watching them in their entirety. And so I've spoiled the algorithm. Right? It thinks I'm sincerely interested in this horrible content. It's just so funny to hear Bane talking about grind sets and how, if his attitude's changed, it's only because he's focusing on himself and his goals, blah, blah, blah. It's like, I don't know if you've seen The Dark Knight Rises, but he wasn't a good guy, not someone to emulate.
I think that you should put a clip of it in the recording. I hope you will.
Oh, I will. I'll throw one in right here.
I've learned to keep moving in silence, to stop explaining myself, and to protect my energy. I don't need their approval. I don't need their applause. The path I'm on wasn't made for them. It was made for me. And no matter how loud they get, I'll keep going because I know who I am. And that's enough.
You really surprised me with that. Like I was not.
I waited, man.
It was one of the last things I would have expected you to say.
And with that, I think it's time for us to get into our first question. This first question comes from friend of the pod, Andrew, in response to our episode on Mary Shelley's Frankenstein. Andrew writes, appreciated Caroline as a guest in the literary/female perspective on the movie. I found it interesting that Fab found this movie so enjoyable as a comedy, whereas he dislikes comedies as a genre. Is it the unexpected or absurd aspects of comedy, whether intentional or unintentional, that you enjoy, but more mainstream, less dry, laugh-out-loud comedies are ineffective for you? I know you're a big Tim and Eric fan. On topic, did De Niro have any major comedic roles before this 1994 movie I was unaware of? So that's really a question for you. I'll let you respond to that first.
Sure. I think it's a really interesting question, Andrew. I don't know that I necessarily agree with your framing or the context from which you're asking this question. Doesn't everybody find bad things funny? And like, you don't have to find Mary Shelley's Frankenstein as funny as I did, but doesn't everybody, am I off about this, Mike? Tell me, doesn't everybody find bad things funny? Like if something's like really bad, isn't that like a relatively universal source of comedy? Like when something that's supposed to be good is bad? Like it plays with expectations in a way that I think is like really familiar to everyone, right? Like,
I think it depends on the type of bad that it is. You know, Red Letter Media has made careers. They've made their whole career out of watching and reacting to bad films, but there are types of bad films that lend themselves better to enjoyment.
Yeah.
More audacious or ones that are bigger failures.
Yeah. Yeah.
There are a lot of bad films that are just boring.
Yeah, it is, I think, the audacity of Frankenstein that made me find it so funny. Like, it's like the scene in the middle where Victor is animating the creation.
The monster.
It's only because you can tell that Kenneth Branagh thought it was so cool when he like designed, directed, and starred in the scene that it is funny. Like it wouldn't be funny if it were smaller. So I think you're right. I think that's really astute. So the answer to your question, Andrew, is yes. Generally, that is what I find funny is like drier, like more esoteric, kind of weird, absurdist comedy. But that's not why I found Mary Shelley's Frankenstein funny. I think I found Mary Shelley's Frankenstein funny because it is the kind of thing that Mike described. Like it's like bad, but it's got a big personality and it's taken a big swing and missing in a lot of ways that are like that have comical tension with what Kenneth Branagh was trying to achieve. I also will just say, as an answer to your on-topic question, I mean, I'm sorry that we read this question a little bit too late, but the movie you're looking for is Midnight Run, which we recapped in last week's episode. So there you go. He wasn't a major comedic role before the 1994 film you were unaware of, Mary Shelley's Frankenstein.
Yeah, the interesting thing too about your reaction to Frankenstein, I like comedies, and I didn't find it that funny. So to each their own, you know. I think I was more able to get on Kenneth Branagh's wavelength than you were.
Yeah, you're just more of a Kenneth Branagh type, I think, than I am.
Ain't that the truth? Shakespearean is what they call me. Great question, Andrew, and spoiler alert, we will hear from Andrew again before the end of this pod.
Very thought-provoking.
Our second letter comes from friend of the pod, Zoe, who you may recall did write into us previously, but whose letter I did not read on air because it was just a quote from the film Shark Tale. Zoe writes, Dear Mike and Mike, I write to you today as a wounded but unwavering citizen of the Niro Nation. I tuned into the last special episode with bated breath, my little email heart fluttering, only to find that my mail was skipped. A true tragedy. I've since begun the healing process, and I'm doubling down on my commitment to this noble cause. So consider this my comeback tour. Art is coming soon. It did arrive in the intervening time, and I will link to it in the show notes. But for now, I bring you ideas and inquiries because that's what a dedicated member of the Niro Nation does. Well, we call them citizens, but thank you.
I was just about to say, I wouldn't call you a member. It's not a fucking country club. It's a country.
That's right. So Zoe asked a couple of questions here. The first being, are all De Niro characters actually just the same guy in different outfits? Secret De Niro Multiverse? And the second question is, if 0 Day was a cry for help, what do you think Bobby was trying to tell us? She concludes the letter by saying, and just know, when the Shark Tale episode finally comes around, I'll be there. I have so many questions about Don Lino, the emotional depth of underwater mob bosses, and how long De Niro studied marine life to prepare for the role. There will be shark queries. You are not ready. Anyway, that's all for now from your girl on the ground, sending love, questions, and Bobby blessings. With so-called sass and cinematic devotion, Zoe.
A loyal yet occasionally overlooked citizen of De Niro Nation, she says. I will just say, Zoe, you're not overlooked. We looked at it. We acknowledged it. We talked about it.
Yeah.
We just didn't read it. And spoiler alert, we'll talk about it organically as part of the film Shark Tale in next week's Shark Tale episode. So, yeah, these questions, I don't know. It's tough. I'd like to be able to imagine that all of the De Niro characters are the same guy in different outfits. I think that at this point, now that I've seen literally 1/3 of his filmography, it's become relatively impossible to keep up that illusion. So I don't know how to even engage earnestly with this question other than just to say, I know there's just far too much diversity in the characters he plays, right? There's no way that Johnny Boy from Mean Streets became Jack Burns from Meet the Parents. There's just simply no way. Like those characters could not possibly be more different from one another. So there you go. If 0 Day was a cry for help, what do you think Bobby was trying to tell us? Robert De Niro is a little bit of a milquetoast normie lib politically. Yeah. And for what it's worth, that's basically what my political views are.
Radical centrist.
Right. Radical centrist, baby. And so I don't know if it was a cry for help from him, individually, but I do think that he was trying to say something about the current political climate and about this moment that we're living through in America right now. And I think that in a lot of ways, that worldview is insufficient to actually address some of the more challenging societal, philosophical, emotional, cognitive problems that we are experiencing, as a species and certainly in Western culture over the past 5 or 10 years. So I do think it was him trying to cry out for help and draw attention to some problems with society right now. I just don't think it worked very well. So I think I can engage with that second one a little bit more earnestly. What do you think about these questions, Mike?
Well said. No, I agree. I've tried to make the De Niro multiverse work in my head, and it just I can't. Unfortunately, it's sad. I'd like to. I should note too, I actually accidentally skipped over her third question in this letter. She asked, "Do you think Fearless Leader from Rocky and Bullwinkle listens to Limp Bizkit on his morning commute? Bonus: is it ironically or with terrifying sincerity?" And I'll say right off the bat, no, I don't think so. I think if anything, he listens to like KMFDM or Rammstein, some kind of German metal, Rammstein, of course, being potentially the only band that Mike's wife, Caroline, listens to. So shout out to Caroline, creator of our podcast artwork.
Yeah, I actually think he listens to just Gregorian chants. Like he just has the Halo soundtrack on repeat in his 6-disc changer. It's just 6 copies of the Halo OST.
Did you know that in the 1990s Gregorian chanting was like really popular?
I feel like there were a bunch of like Enigma songs that had that sound in it, and I feel like there was some Enya songs that had those sorts of sounds in them, right? There was a real resurgence of that sort of like hippie-ish kind of new wave or new age rather kind of music that had those sort of soundscapes in them. I didn't listen to any of it, but I did know that. Yeah.
So yes to everything you said, but no, I mean actual Gregorian chants. There was this album put out by these Benedictine monks, and it was an album of Gregorian chants, and it apparently was only expected to sell 10,000 copies and ended up going double platinum.
Really?
It's really weird, isn't it?
Okay. I'm sorry. What was this called? I'm going to listen to it tonight.
The album is called Chant by the Benedictine monks of Santo Domingo de Silos.
There's a playlist of it, but the songs are all grayed out. That's crazy. Well, there you go. Bummer.
Well, maybe I'll find it on YouTube and link to it in the show notes for us to listen to at our pleasure.
You got to make sure you post Zoe's art in the show notes as well. This is beautiful. Zoe, did you draw this yourself?
That's what I was just about to get to. Zoe's art, for those who are currently listening and unable to stop their car and take a look at the artwork, is it is a faithfully recreated shot from the film Shark Tale of Don Lino holding a shrimp. And there is a quote from the film. That quote was her original email sent to us 10 weeks ago. And so I think it's worth taking a look. It's excellent. Great job, Zoe. I'm not going to read the quote because I feel like you're trying to get me to read the quote on air after I didn't 10 weeks ago. But I do appreciate the care that went into creating this wonderful piece of art.
It's interesting. You got some misplaced apostrophes here. Like you've got some it's where it's the contraction without the apostrophe. And then you've got some it's where it's the possessive version, but with the apostrophe. And try a little harder next time.
Damn, you just got Mike the Fabbed.
Mike the Fabbed.
It's a beautiful picture, though. I'm honestly really impressed.
Our third letter comes from friend of the pod, Andrew, again, back for seconds. This is in response to our 20th episode Spectacular. So we've been sitting on this one for a minute. Andrew writes, "Keep up the good work. One question I'm curious about to put you both on the spot, but what was your favorite episode of the podcast, irrespective of the movie being reviewed?"
Oh, it's so hard to pick. I'm looking back at the list. Oh, it's so hard. I don't know. There have been so many that I've really loved. I think if I had to pick just one that I enjoy the most, it would probably be Sleepers. I think that it's probably the best recap that I've done. Just substantively. And I think it was a really nice mix of like serious commentary. There's a lot of really funny bits in there. Like I still laugh when I think about you laughing, thinking about the guy getting crushed and not being able to eat the hot dogs that the proprietor of the hot dog stand is going to give him free for life. That's an incredibly funny bit. Yep. And I also love that movie. It was it was one of the only good movies that we've watched for the podcast so far. So I think I'd have to pick that one, but it's not easy. Like love The Fan, love Frankenstein, Rocky and Bullwinkle's awesome, Joy, Gang That Couldn't Shoot Straight. Like there's a lot of nice ones in there that I look back on very fondly. What about you, Mike?
Sleepers is a good pick. It's nice because you're right. You gave a really great recap and analysis of the film, but we were also able to introduce some levity there. And I like that. Yep. It's an incredibly dramatic, serious film. It has very serious subject matter. It's the kind of movie you cry at, but we're still able to inject some humor into it, have some fun with it, riff on it.
But
not me,
yeah.
but I was able to have some fun with it and laugh at it. And I think that's just I think that is
more of a laugher than a crier.
I think that's a great distillation of what makes the podcast work, is the fact that we can talk about this sensitive subject matter and this prestigious dramatic film from the 90s, but also goof around and to the point where I'm crying laughing thinking about this guy getting pancaked by a hot dog cart. This is a tough question. It's hard for me to pick only one. The ones that you mentioned, definitely all on my short list. I think I'd want to highlight The Adventures of Rocky and Bullwinkle. I thought it was a really fun episode to record and to listen to. I also really enjoyed our 20th episode Spectacular, which, wasn't about a film, but I really liked, it represented just our commitment to the project. It kind of felt like a victory lap. Hey, we've been doing this 20 weeks straight. We've been improving, and now we're just going to take a step back and have some fun with it, And I really appreciated not just the conversation that we had in that episode, but the fact that the citizens of the Niro Nation showed up and listened to it. So I really appreciate it. It signals to me that people care about more than the films, right? They care about the dynamic, they care about the relationship, and I think that's great.
So true. I completely agree.
Now I'm going to put you on the spot with my first burning question.
All right.
My question for you is, if you weren't doing Our Hero De Niro, what would your dream podcast be about?
That's a pretty tough, buzzer beater question to just have to come out with right away. It's so hard to think of one because I feel like we're already doing it. So a couple things I'd say. So one, you and me did the year of IMAX last year, which I think we've talked about a little bit on the podcast, but just in case folks don't remember. This is the second year kind of harebrained scheme that Mike and I cooked up of creating like a ton of work for ourselves, watching movies that we mostly won't enjoy.
Yeah.
The first year of this harebrained scheme was the year of IMAX, where we committed to see every film that played in our local IMAX theater for an entire year. And we actually went out of town for a few as well. So where'd we land? I think I saw 52 and you saw 51.
51.
Did we both see 52? Okay, yeah. So it was 52 films for me and 51 films for Mike. And, I think about 6 months in, we started talking about doing Our Hero De Niro, and I was like, fuck, man, a year of IMAX podcast would have been really good. So I certainly really wish that... oh, thanks, babe. I got some tacos here.
Can I take your ducky for a minute?
Sure, hon.
I made tacos.
Yeah, I know.
They're extra noisy.
All right, I love you guys.
All right, love you too.
Have a nice time.
Bye.
Yep. You hear that?
No.
Nora says, as she's walking out of the room very earnestly, it's too bad Uncle Mike isn't here. If he was, we could give him a taco. I know he likes tacos.
Oh, God, yeah. That would be nice.
We know you like tacos, but you're not here. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Anywho.
You're in the middle of a sentence.
So when we started talking about doing Our Hero De Niro, which we were calling De Niro Dudes at the time. I can't remember if we ever acknowledged that in the podcast, but we were just talking about it earlier today. I realized, oh man, we should have been doing a podcast for the year of IMAX. That would have been a very funny film podcast to do, just seeing every film big enough to be released in IMAX for an entire year and doing a podcast episode about it. So there's that, but otherwise, I don't know. I think I'd want to be doing a podcast about one of the other topics that I'm interested in and really like talking about, current events, business news, tech news, something like that. But I feel like this is the one I really want to be doing. So it's challenging to answer the question because this is kind of it for me. What about you?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with everything you said. It was a real missed opportunity that we didn't turn the year of IMAX into a podcast, but you live and learn. For me, I guess I feel so tempted to say a politics podcast because, the Democrats, they're looking for their Joe Rogan. And I feel like the dynamic that we have is pretty good. Sadly, it just wasn't meant to be, at least not at this point in time.
It's a fair thought for a podcast. And maybe in a year and a half when this project's over, we could talk about doing a politics podcast.
Yeah, I think we set up a little video, recording studio, record live together, throw that on YouTube, get 1 billion views, some corporate sponsorships. That's what this podcast lacks, corporate sponsorships. I would bow to our corporate overlords for a free foam mattress or whatever supplements that people sell.
I bowed down to the IMAX Corporation last year for $250 in free merch. So
that's true. They were kind enough to send us free hats and sweatshirts, which I really appreciated.
Didn't acknowledge us in their year-end Instagram story, though, which I earnestly thought was pretty fucked up.
That is a little fucked up.
IMAX Corporation.
I forgot about
calling
that.
you guys out. The IMAX Corporation is, I think, rightfully having an incredible couple years from a business performance perspective. They really seem to have done a good job on capitalizing on, I think, some of the post-pandemic, FOMO that folks have felt over the past few years, wanting to get out, wanting to do more, but also the way that, inflation and how much more expensive things are getting has turned just conceptually going to the movies into a luxury experience by doubling down on the most luxurious way to go to the movies. And I'm really happy for them. It's an incredible product and I love IMAX and it's the only way I ever want to see movies in theaters, honestly. I'd like to think that we played a not totally insignificant part in this kind of stratospheric recovery of the IMAX Corporation over the past couple of years, and to not be given any acknowledgement after being quite literally the biggest single customers of the IMAX Corporation last year. Like, no single human being gave the IMAX Corporation more revenue in 2024 than either of us did. We put the hashtag in every single post. Like, come on, guys. Can you give us a shout out?
That's true. IMAX Corporation, it's up to you to make things right. You've been called out. You've been Mike the Fabbed.
Mike the Fabbed.
Great first burning question, but now it's time to take things back to a friend of the pod, Andrew, who wrote a letter in response to our episode about The Fan. Andrew wrote, "Another entertaining episode as always. I had quite a few thoughts about this movie and your commentary. You mentioned things like evading service and the insanity defense. I think that Hollywood struggles to properly represent legal and mental health issues as we saw in other films like Ezra and Marvin's Room, and this influences public perception of these issues. Do you think the responsibility is on the producers, or should we as viewers look to these products in entertainment rather than education? Or is it a shared responsibility, or does it not matter?"
It's a really interesting question. I think that it's complicated, right? I don't think that... So in a vacuum, I think my answer would be that the responsibility is on the part of the producers. That those who are putting content and art out into the world, and especially who are going to profit based on that, have a responsibility to be truthful and accurate in the way that they're depicting things. I think what adds complexity to that is very rarely are the ways in the modern day, very rarely are the ways these things represented actively harmful. I think to the discourse, they tend to just, I think, foment some reasonably harmless misunderstandings of the way these things work. But the counterfactual in this hypothetical scenario isn't that everyone has all of the correct, accurate information about, like, autism, for example, in the example of Ezra. The counterfactual is maybe there's some folks who either have, like, no exposure to folks on the autism spectrum or have, like, weird prejudices and biases against folks who are on the spectrum. And so, like, I think that adds a little bit of complexity where it's like, yeah, I think there is a bit of a moral duty that producers have to depict things in an accurate way, or at least in a way that doesn't do additional harm to, you know, issues, subject matter, marginalized groups, like whatever that they're representing. But, like, it's not like they're making it worse. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know. What do you think about this, Mike? Have you ever thought about this?
No, I think that was actually really well said, and I agree with all of that. I guess ultimately I view it as a shared responsibility because, yes, these producers, they have such wide-ranging influence that I think it's important for them to maintain some baseline level of, you know, authenticity and accuracy when depicting these things. But also the viewing audience needs to watch things with a critical eye and not just take everything at face value. Because yes, you could make a film. I mean, Ezra's not a great example, but you could make a film that maybe has a minor character with, you know, some sort of mental health condition or something, and it's not the focal point of the film, but it could still spread that misinformation. And I think it's just on the viewer to think critically about what's being depicted, what the purpose of it is within the larger context of the film, and not go to you know, movies and TV shows for accurate academic depictions of mental health conditions, etc.
Oh, to live in a world where that would be a reasonable thing to expect of people at all.
Well, Andrew, thank you again for another fantastic question. Nailing it. Batting 1,000 right now.
Yeah, that one was actually very thought-provoking. I really liked that question. That was a really good one.
Yeah. And now we move on to a question from friend of the pod, Philip, aka Lips. Philip writes in response to our Angel Heart episode and says, "De Niro dudes, intrigued by Angel Heart, even if I had no idea what was happening the whole time. The twist sounds similar in a way to the earlier Pacino De Niro bomb you guys reviewed," he's referring to Righteous Kill, "but actually well done instead. And since there is an alternative universe where you're reviewing Pacino movies instead, how did this movie compare to The Devil's Advocate, if you've seen it?"
I've never seen the movie, but I don't want to seem as though I'm unduly criticizing Zoe's grammatical mistakes. So I do want to point out here that Philip started that final sentence with the word "and," which is a huge writing no-no. So, Philip, get serious, man. But no, I've never seen the film. You ever seen it, Mike?
You just got Mike the Fabbed.
Mike the Fabbed.
No, I also haven't seen it.
Oh, sorry, Philip. That sucks, man. It seems like a good question. It's just a bummer that neither of us has seen the movie, so we really can't opine.
Listen, it is so critically, I'm not joking, it is so critically important for the citizens of the Niro Nation to subscribe, to share the podcast with their friends and family, because by the time this project ends, I want us to be successful enough to where we can hire an editor, so I'm not doing it every week, and we can roll right into doing the Pacino Pals podcast. That's aspirational, okay, guys? It's on you to keep this thing rolling.
I can only agree.
But thank you for the question, Philip.
I agree. It's a great question. It's a shame.
Yeah, listen, it's on my list. It's just not available on any of my streaming platforms at this time, and I don't want to spend money renting movies outside of the De Niro films that I'm obligated to watch for this podcast. Our next question comes once again from heavy hitter Andrew, also writing in response to our Angel Heart episode. Andrew writes, I want to thank you both for providing the most confusing synopsis of any narrative media I've ever heard. That's my bad. Do you think it matters much for listeners to understand the movies you're reviewing, or is it more about the themes and analysis? I am interested to hear your response to this one, Mike.
Yeah, it's a really interesting question. I think similar to your earlier question, Andrew, I fundamentally disagree with some very foundational assumptions about the way thinking works that kind of underpin this question.
Interesting.
And how could you understand the themes and analysis if you didn't understand the movie? Like, I think that understanding both of those things is important. And to me, right, I mean, unsurprisingly, I think the themes and analysis are what's most important. But I think understanding the film is kind of critical to understand the themes and analysis. Otherwise, it's just information. Like, it's like, think about a lot like different learning styles, right? And like ways to understand information and whether there's durability to that understanding. Like, there's some types of knowledge that are about understanding how to like follow a recipe or a set of steps or whatever. And there are some types of knowledge where you actually understand the relationship between input and output and like what the purpose of steps you're taking in performing a process are or whatever. And like, I feel like if you listen to the podcast and have no sense of what's happening in the film from a plot perspective, but just memorize what we say analytically the film was about, that's kind of meaningless knowledge. Like, it doesn't really mean anything. It's not going to help you to be more thoughtful about films or about literature or about this kind of analysis or anything. So I don't know that it's really possible to answer this question, because I think you really need to understand both if we're being effective as commentators. I mean, you can listen to the podcast just because you find it funny and entertaining. I hope you do. I certainly do when I'm listening to it. But if this podcast is about film and literary analysis, I don't think it can succeed unless we're doing both of those things well. What do you think, Mike?
That's a really interesting response. Very different than what I kind of thought about when I read this letter. So I'm coming at it from a slightly different angle because, unlike you, I listen to podcasts for entertainment purposes. So I listened to 2 recap podcasts, both of which were, I think, pretty big influences on this podcast. So one is...
Not for me, they weren't.
Yeah, Mike's never listened to a podcast in his life. He never even heard of the art form until we talked about this.
Started one.
So one that I listened to is a bad film recap podcast called The Flophouse, and another is a Star Trek recap podcast called The Greatest Generation. And I listen to them differently. So for The Flophouse, I'm not a fan of bad films as like a genre, if you will, or like a meta genre of film. I don't like what Red Letter Media does, what The Flophouse does. The people who only watch bad films, I don't like that personally. I think it's like drinking soda all the time. It's like you're only getting bad calories. And I feel like when you're only engaging with bad content, or when you're only engaging with content ironically, I think it kind of like destroys your taste and your perception of what's good. That's why I like this project, Our Hero De Niro, because De Niro's in a lot of schlock. He's in a lot of shit for paychecks, but he's also in a lot of good stuff. And so there's a balance there because I want to engage with it sincerely. But when I listen to The Flophouse, I don't watch the films ahead of time, or when I see the new episode drop, I never do. Sometimes it's coincidence if they recap like Venom: The Last Dance, which is a film that Mike and I saw as part of our year of IMAX. I'm going into it with that knowledge, but because I'm listening to it as more of an entertainment product, I'm still enjoying the dynamic between the three hosts. I'm still getting a lot out of it for entertainment purposes. Whereas for The Greatest Generation, I enjoy Star Trek. It's not always good, but overall I enjoy it quite a bit. And so I'll make sure I watch the episodes before I listen to their respective recap episodes. And I do find it enriching because it allows me to, more deeply understand the references, the callbacks, the scene breakdowns. When we roll for the next week's film in these episodes, that's a deliberate choice for us to include that in the episode. We're giving you the opportunity. You have a week from when that comes out to watch the episode alongside us and then be able to participate more meaningfully when you're listening to it. So if you haven't watched any of the films going into this podcast, give it a shot. Watch Shark Tale. The episode's coming out next week, and then you'll better understand it when we're talking about it.
It's a short film, so it's an easy one to work into this with. Yeah, that's interesting. I think we can just chalk that up to the fact that I don't listen to podcasts, right?
Yeah, but ultimately I agree with you because I think that, yes, if you watch the films, then I want it to deepen the experience of listening to the podcast. But if not, I would hope that the conversation is still engaging. It still has something to offer in terms of entertainment or, insight or analysis. So I hope there's still something there for you.
Yeah, I really want to make sure that I was clear because I'm kind of putting together in the way you've answered this that you may have misunderstood me. And so maybe I was unclear. And so I don't want listeners to misunderstand me either. I'm not saying that you need to listen or need to watch the movies to be able to appreciate the podcast. What I'm saying is that, like, if Andrew's comment is that your Angel Heart synopsis was the most confusing synopsis of narrative media he's ever heard, then
Guilty.
Like I think that is a failure, right? I'm not trying to give you a hard time, but it's like, I'm not saying listeners have to watch the movies. I'm saying, like, if we are being effective in doing the kind of substantive messaging, like aside from the entertainment value that we're trying to in this podcast, I think it's important that the synopses are good because otherwise the analysis doesn't work because the listeners aren't going to they're not going to have gotten that explanation of what happens in the text, what happens narratively to back up what our theses are about what the film was about. You don't have to watch the movies. I mean, just happy you're listening to the podcast. Nobody has to watch the movies, although you should try to do it if you haven't.
Listen, you make a great point, and I look forward to your substantive recap of Shark Tale next week.
As do I.
So thank you once again for a fantastic question, Andrew. And with that, it's time to move into burning question number 2. That's right. This one might be a little easier for you, Mike. Mike, what's your go-to comfort movie? The one that you put on when you just need a reset.
Oh, well, lately, it's been Ponyo, which is my favorite Studio Ghibli movie. It's definitely a comfort movie for me, but it's Nora's comfort movie. So it's something that she and I have in common. It's the first movie she ever sat down and watched all the way through. And so I think it's always going to be really special to her. But it's just, I think it is criminally underappreciated in the Hayao Miyazaki canon. I think it's better than plenty of his films that are, I think, more widely considered to be quite good or quite a bit better, I guess, in comparison. So currently that's it. From like a comfort food perspective, I've only really watched movies for the past 3 years. And I've actually been more of a book reader and TV show watcher.
Okay.
Until about 3 years ago. So I think for me, prior, I would have talked about TV shows as being like something I'd watch for comfort. And so the two I would say are like Breaking Bad if I'm in the mood to do something that's like a little bit heavier, or Psych if I'm looking for something that's lighter. Like those are the two things that I just would have thrown like some random episode on in the background if I was looking for something to comfort watch. What about you?
Yeah, I think it's generally easier for me to throw on a TV show as like a comfort viewing because it's so much shorter. And in terms of TV shows, yeah, I think about like Futurama, It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia, Seinfeld, Breaking Bad, depending on the season. But yeah, things like that. But my go-to comfort movie, I thought about this one quite a bit. And some runners up were The Dark Knight, The Matrix, and Tenet. But in general, I don't like to rewatch movies too often. But the one that I ultimately landed on, this is like real guilty pleasure level shit, is the 2013 J.J. Abrams film, Star Trek Into Darkness.
It's a nice film.
It actually has quite a negative reception among Star Trek fans. I was kind of surprised to learn this because I got into Star Trek through the original J.J. Abrams reboot film from 2009, which I think is a fantastic reboot.
I love that movie.
I think it is overall probably a much better film than Star Trek Into Darkness, like objectively speaking. But it has the problem where, not problem, but like it has the issue when it comes to rewatchability where you're spending the first hour of the film putting everything into place, setting everyone up, introducing all of the characters. And Star Trek Into Darkness is able to take that dynamic that's established in the first film and just run with it. And I love everything about it. I don't care that it has that it's like peak J.J. Abrams, like lens flare. We're going to repurpose.
I love the J.J. Abrams lens flare.
They are intense, but I love them too.
Yeah, I really like it though. I love that.
I don't mind. I think it's because I didn't have a previous reverence for the franchise. I don't mind that they butchered the Khan twist and like all of that stuff. I love Benedict Cumberbatch as his version of Khan and his deep voice and lizard face. I love Peter Weller, aka RoboCop, who's militarizing Starfleet in secret. I love the dynamic with Kirk and Spock. I enjoy all of it. I love the aesthetic of it. It looks beautiful. Michael Giacchino's score is phenomenal. There's just a lot to enjoy about it in terms of pure action sci-fi spectacle. And so that's got to be my pick.
It's a great pick. I love that. I've only seen it once. I saw it in theaters around the time when it first came out. I really enjoyed it. I love J.J. Abrams. Like, J.J. Abrams gets a lot of flack, I think, because The Rise of Skywalker is the worst fucking movie I have ever seen in my life.
Legendarily bad.
But, I think that we have kind of retconned The Force Awakens due to the abject failure of The Last Jedi and Rise of Skywalker to be worse than it was. Force Awakens was quite nice. And, before that, J.J. Abrams, he did some great stuff. Like, he's a talented filmmaker with a distinctive visual style that I don't think is for everyone. Like, the lens flare is really intense, but I don't know. I really like his films, honestly. I've always really liked J.J. Abrams.
I agree. I really liked every J.J. Abrams film, not that there are many, up until The Rise of Skywalker. And unfortunately, the way that sequel trilogy ended is so bad that I wish to never rewatch any of the sequel films. I want to forget about them. Yeah.
I was so optimistic about the sequel trilogy after The Force Awakens. I was like, well, it's derivative, which is like a little boring, but safe, and I think we'd all have taken safe after the prequel trilogy, honestly. And The Last Jedi was so bad. And amazingly, Rise of Skywalker was 100,000 times worse than The Last Jedi. And I already kind of thought that was the bottom. So pretty incredible.
I think that was a real like kind of watershed moment for me too when The Last Jedi came out. I have a distinct memory. I watched it with my brother at the local IMAX theater. And I remember walking out of it and feeling confused. And my brother, and because it's a Star Wars movie directed by Rian Johnson, who directed the greatest episodes of Breaking Bad.
The greatest directors of all time.
Right.
Like, yeah, and I remember a fucking rock star.
Walking out of it thinking I didn't like it very much. And my brother turns to me and he goes, I'm never going to let you pick a movie again. And I remember messaging you about it and saying, I think I didn't really like it. And you agreed with me. And I was pleasantly surprised by that. But I think the moment for me that sticks out in my mind was, I think it's kind of what inspired me to stop caring about the culture war, because disliking The Last Jedi for whatever reason, it became associated with right-wing, anti-diversity, blah. And I'm over here thinking, I just don't think it was a very good Star Wars film. I hate how they, for all sorts of reasons that, we're not going to bother getting into now. But I have a lot of fundamental issues with that film. And I just remember thinking, like, people online accuse me of being racist or whatever because I didn't like this film, but it just came down to the script. I don't know. Right. Sorry.
I think it's a bad movie. I love diversity. I thought that stuff was the best stuff about it, honestly. Like, in a field of terrible fucking creative decisions. Like, the diverse casting was a bright spot in a very bad film.
Right. Sorry you wasted half of these characters.
Right. There's great actors in this film. Like, John Boyega is an incredible talent and a very charismatic guy. And he's totally fucking wasted in that film. Like, what are you doing with the character of Finn? Like, one of the most promising things about The Force Awakens.
It was not meant to be. Our next letter comes from friend of the pod, Chase. Chase writing a second letter. Appreciate it, man. Thank you for sticking with us after all these weeks. And he wrote in response to our episode about Arthur and the Minimoys, aka Arthur and the Invisibles.
I've opened a second beer, just so everyone knows. I'm not sure if that was audible. I asked Caroline to bring me up a Modelo, aka McClello, to accompany my tacos. It goes quite nicely.
Great. Chase writes, greetings, Mike, and the Niro Nation once again. I'll spare your eyeballs from the children's chalkboard font for the rest of this fan letter. Writing in because I do have hazy memories of a DVD of Arthur and the Invisibles being around the home of one of my childhood schoolmate friends back in 2007. We had some sleepover or birthday party happening, the specifics don't really matter. And for some reason we decided to put it in the player and watch it. I found it so ugly and boring. 8-year-old me couldn't appreciate Mia Farrow or Robert De Niro at the time. That after 20 minutes, I desperately begged my friend to put on something else, and we ended up watching Howl's Moving Castle instead. I will say, that's a good upgrade. I also thought it was inferior to the similar but less off-putting The Ant Bully released the same year. The main question I was curious to ask you both was, what movie directors do you think reach a very high level of popularity for a brief moment in time after a few specific films, only to drop off precipitously in quality, relevance, etc.? Luc Besson is like that to me. He had some compelling and unique synergy happening briefly with La Femme Nikita and Leon the Professional, which although I find overrated. And depending on if you like Heavy Metal Magazine / batshit crazy, I can't even pronounce this, Band-Aid, I get it right. The Fifth Element.
Should have looked this up before you had to read it out loud. Yeah.
I would never do such a thing. The Fifth Element, but his filmography for the past 2 decades I just find dismal and baffling. Some people feel the same way about Nicholas Winding Refn, where after Drive, his filmography very drastically plummets in critical acceptance and popularity. Shyamalan is also a notorious case-in-point example to me. Hot takes on beloved or popular directors you just can't deal with are encouraged too. Until then, au revoir and step on that troll doll.
This is a tough question for me to answer. I think that the answer or the sort of examples that you gave, Chase, are all really good. I'd like this opportunity to talk a little bit about Paul Schrader, though, who I don't know necessarily fell off in any kind of permanent fashion, but I think there's an unevenness and spottiness to his filmography that I think speaks to the importance of collaborators. You think about like the 2 great Paul Schrader films, right? One wasn't even directed by him. It's Taxi Driver, which was written by Paul Schrader, but directed by Martin Scorsese. And the 2 of them together, I think, are able to do something so special in that film and with the character of Travis Bickle. I'm so excited to watch for the podcast. I hope we roll it soon. That I don't know that either of them could have done on their own. And then when we come back to kind of his like the best version of that type of man in a room story that he likes to tell, again, 40 years later with First Reformed, obviously there is a tremendous strength to Schrader's script and his direction that provides a lot for what happens in that film. But Ethan Hawke is integral to making that film the kind of transcendent artistic masterpiece that it is. And so I think that Paul Schrader is kind of the example of a filmmaker for me that kind of makes me feel that way. But I think there's a lot to be said about that kind of quality in the others whom you've talked about as a factor as well. I think that M. Night Shyamalan in particular is someone who I think has been at points in his career held back from his worst instincts. And when he was given sort of freer rein to do whatever he wanted to do, it wasn't good, And another example of this, I think that's it's a little more passé, and I think that I don't know, it's a little bit more passé, but it's worth mentioning. Another is George Lucas, right, where the original Star Wars trilogy is brilliant, and Mike from the Red Letter Media Plinkett reviews calls it art from adversity. That's what really makes the original Star Wars trilogy so great, is that George Lucas was dealing with tight timelines, very little creative control, difficult budgetary constraints, a lot of folks with their hands kind of in the pie, moderating him and forcing him to make more kind of like democratically acceptable decisions creatively with the three films. And when they let him loose in the late 90s and early 2000s on the prequel trilogy, it was a fucking disaster. I mean, he's just not a filmmaker with very good instincts, even though he is a filmmaker with exceptional talent when his instincts are kind of taken in and pulled under control a little bit. And I think we see that happen a lot with creative geniuses who have a lot of really wonderful ideas, but there's too many of those wonderful ideas and they're not the most disciplined from a creative perspective. And I don't know, that's kind of what the question makes me think about. So Paul Schrader would be the answer that I would give.
That's an interesting answer to that question. I think Chase highlighted some great examples. You also highlighted some great examples. Another one that came to mind for me that I don't have much to say about is Richard Kelly. He's the director of Donnie Darko, which is friend of the pod Zoe's favorite film. And I watched it for the first time at the beginning of this year, and I liked it quite a bit. So I did some reading about him, and he's only made 2 other films. He made Southland Tales, which I would like to watch. I hear is batshit, but it was like critically maligned. And he also made The Box, which was some like mid-budget Cameron Diaz thriller from like 2005 or something. I mean, I don't really remember it very well. I never watched it. And since then, I think he's kind of been in director jail or purgatory or something. And I think that's really interesting because Donnie Darko was such a cult sensation, but he has not been able to recapture that magic.
Don't you think that, kind of to my observation, Jake Gyllenhaal had a lot to do with what made Donnie Darko work? He has an intense charisma in that role.
Sure, I'll agree with that. I liked Donnie Darko, or Donald Darko as I like to call it.
Yes, yep.
But the real example that came to mind for me is the Wachowski sisters. Now, for those who don't know, let me tell you something.
That's a great example.
Let me educate the citizens of the Niro Nation. The Wachowski sisters made one of my favorite films of all time, 1999's The Matrix. And it is hard to overstate the impact that The Matrix had on, I mean, so much pop culture, science fiction filmmaking, action filmmaking, groundbreaking visual techniques. It was philosophically ambitious. It was just instantly iconic. And the Wachowskis were just instantly thrust to the top of Hollywood directors. And it seemed like they could do no wrong. But then the sequels hit 4 years later, and they did that thing which has become much more common nowadays, where they said, we're going to make our sequel a 2-parter and separate it by a year, and people will love this bloated 5-hour-long film experience that they have to wait a year to see the entirety of. And so in 2003, The Matrix Reloaded came out, and I actually do have a soft spot for that film. I like it quite a bit. But then Revolutions came out and concluded the trilogy, and that was kind of a dud. I really can't defend that film as a diehard Matrix fan. And since then, it's been tough. I mean, their films have been cult hits at best. You think about Speed Racer, that's one of Reddit's favorite films, but that was a flop at the time. Cloud Atlas, also praised by Reddit for its ambition, but that was pretty polarizing. And Jupiter Ascending, my God, I remember when that came out in 2015, I saw it.
What a nightmare.
In theaters. And when I left the theater, I remember thinking that the Wachowskis owed me $15 for my ticket. That's how bad it was. And I was like, ride or die for the Wachowskis, you know? I will give them credit because I believe they ghost-directed V for Vendetta, and I remember that being pretty good. So, also to their credit, I appreciate that they still take big swings, but man, it has been to diminishing returns, and I didn't even mention 2021's The Matrix Resurrections, which, much like Star Wars The Rise of Skywalker, was a Lego sequel so bad that I just hope to erase it from my memory. I just want to forget about it.
I've honestly totally forgotten about it. I forgot it existed until you mentioned it right
Anytime
now.
I remember it,
thank you for reminding me.
It just makes me mad. Yeah, I'm sorry to do that to you. But fantastic question, Chase, and thank you for writing in again.
Agreed. Great question. Thank you.
This next question brings it back to our heavy hitter, our Barry Bonds, our Babe Ruth, Andrew, writing in after our episode about the Good Shepherd. Andrew writes, I find it a little tougher to engage with episodes where you start out saying the movie isn't very good. Would you rather feign enthusiasm to encourage viewership, or is your artistic integrity more important? How do you feel about this, Mike?
I think artistic integrity is more important to me than doing what would be good for marketability or listenership or whatever. But that's not why I do it. I do it because I think that what makes the podcast work is the fact that, obviously we're acting a little bit. But I think that Mike and I are embodying versions of ourselves in these discussions that are really close to who we actually are. Like, these conversations are very similar to conversations that we have when it's just the two of us hanging out, like 95% aligned. And I feel like if there's artifice and like a false premise on which a discussion is built, it kind of neuters its emotionality and its impact and its effectiveness a little bit. And so for me, if I was actually having a conversation, I would say it was bad at the outset. And so I feel like I'm being true to myself and embodying the chemistry and the way that we communicate that makes the podcast work. I actually was pretty concerted in my decision to start making those acknowledgments as I would in a totally organic discussion when we got a couple months into the pod, because I had been being more rehearsed and more practiced in the way I communicated for the first several episodes. And in listening and kind of reviewing and thinking about was and wasn't working, I just realized that wasn't working. And I think that what works is the natural conversation and chemistry. And so I just try to be myself when I'm talking for the podcast, for the most part. What about you, Mike?
Yeah, this is a really good question, Andrew. I agree with what you said, Mike. For me, it comes down to, listen, I don't know how you feel as a listener, but for me, my intention is that, this project, we knew going into it that half of De Niro's films are bad. And my intention when we're recording and discussing and having these conversations is, even if the film itself isn't good, hopefully it will spark some interesting conversation or analysis, or get me to think about something differently, or maybe get me to, get us to riff and have fun with it in an unexpected way. And I think that requires sincerity. I think it's interesting. It's notable that you wrote in response to our episode about the Good Shepherd, because I think that was particularly weak, because it just didn't give us much to go off of. It made it harder for us to, I think, expound on it in any interesting ways. But yeah, I really hate this culture of this whole ecosphere of media criticism. I use the term loosely. This whole like network of podcasters and YouTubers who they're only interested in delivering the viewpoints that they know will appeal to their audiences. Like when it comes to Star Wars or Star Trek or whatever, you have so there's so many YouTubers who their whole thing is just bitching about every new thing that is released or whatever, because they know there's a built-in audience for it. And I just don't find it interesting. I don't engage with that kind of content. I'm not interested in producing that kind of content, even if it could possibly make us more marketable if we're just raving about the new whatever. But I also want to make sure we're giving everything a fair shake. I don't want to call something bad just because it has a negative critical reception or legacy. Every time I go into a film, and I know Mike feels the same way, every time we go into a film, we want it to be good, right? We're going to spend hours watching it. We want it to be good. And so, yeah, that's kind of where I land on it.
Yeah, I completely agree. I was on reddit.com/r/OkBuddyCinephile last night, and there was a post about just great films and flops, and someone drew a contrast between The Prestige and Tenet. And I watched every Chris Nolan film last year in preparation for. Why did I watch every Chris Nolan film last year? Was it because we were seeing Interstellar in IMAX? Yeah, that was what it was. And so I watched The Prestige last year, and I watched Tenet. And, I unironically love Tenet. It's not a perfect film, but it's...
God, I love Tenet so much.
It certainly is not 10% as good as the great Chris Nolan films like The Prestige and The Dark Knight, as a lot of film nerds on reddit.com like to say. And, when I think about what you just said, I think about all the hate for Tenet. It's like, how many of these people who are shitposting on reddit.com/r/okbuddycinephile have actually sat down and watched Tenet and really tried to think for themselves without thinking about the hive mind and the fucking echo chamber of dipshits on the internet? Do I think this is a good movie? Because I think that if you actually did that, you'd probably at worst think it was like 75% as good as The Prestige. It's a perfectly great movie. It's like one of Chris Nolan's less good films. He's one of the best directors of all time. Like, it's not like a nightmare. Like, people talk about Tenet online like it's like, how could Chris Nolan make a movie this bad? It's like, what are you talking about? Like, it's like, it's a dumb movie. It's kind of silly. It has silly, bad dialogue like Chris Nolan often writes. And it's like a fun philosophical time travel premise with like really incredible action set pieces. Like, what do you want, guys? Chill the fuck out. Like, and I do think about that a lot. Like, it's like, I'm not interested in doing that when I talk about stuff. I'm going to talk about what I like, and I'm going to talk about what I don't like. And I'm going to try to intellectualize it a little bit and understand both for myself and for our listeners why I like and dislike things. And it's just like, I don't know. It's not always going to be aligned with what the popular consensus is.
Yeah, I think you nailed it. Another great question, Andrew. Thank you for your continued support to the pod.
Agreed. Thank you, Andrew.
All right, we have 3 more questions to go, 2 of whom are from our listeners. This first one, well, it's not technically a question, but it is from Caroline on behalf of your 3-year-old daughter, Nora. Nora writes, I don't like Robert De Niro. He's really boring all the time. Get it together, Robert De Niro. And then it's signed Nora, occasional listener, dictated but not read. Mike, how would you like to respond to this?
I mean,
hate mail, really.
I think that this is a little bit embarrassing, babe. And I think that in, 8 or 9 years, when you're in middle school and your tastes are becoming a little bit more refined and you're hopefully discovering our hero De Niro as a way to feel closer to your father and your Uncle Mike, I think that you will appreciate Robert De Niro, and you'll probably look back on how much you hated this podcast as a toddler with a little bit of shame and embarrassment. But we're gonna love you either way, so it's all good. You've got our support.
Yeah, I have to agree with everything your dad said. And when you do finally revisit this podcast when you're older and really listening to it on your own, I'm just going to leave this here for that time and say I'm invoking my authority as an uncle. I'm making an executive decision, and I'm saying you're grounded. Go to your room without supper and think about the hateful words that you said about Mr. Robert De Niro, okay? And we'll talk about it later. Unbelievable.
It's hard to control a 3-year-old.
Yeah.
She's got bad 3-year-old opinions.
She's rebelling. She's just pro Pacino, anti De Niro. It's sad stuff. You can love them all. I know Mike wants to read this next question, so I'll hand it over to him.
All right. So this question is from friend of the pod, wife of the pod, Caroline. She writes, "Dear dudes, are either of you any good at doing a Barack Obama impression? If so, what do you think he would have to say about Robert De Niro's role as an American icon? Thanks, Obama. Podwife Caroline."
Maybe I'll exit stage right and bring in President Barack Hussein Obama himself. Maybe he'll have something to say. Let me walk off and go get him.
You gotta leave this all in.
Okay. My fellow Americans, thank you so much for inviting me here to participate in the Our Hero De Niro podcast. Loyal citizens may know that I once had a podcast with Bruce Springsteen. And unfortunately, we did not have many opportunities to talk about the filmography, film legend, Robert De Niro. Podwife Caroline was kind enough to ask me what I would have to say about Robert De Niro's role as an American icon. I'd have to say he's one of our greatest stars of the silver screen, and I appreciate that he's a radical centrist Democrat, loyal to the bone of me and my presidency for 8 fantastic years. So Caroline, thank you so much for writing in, and I'm going to hand the reins back over to Mike back at you. Thank you, and God bless America. Thank you for the letter, Caroline, but don't ever tee me up to do impressions. I've tried a few times during the recording of this podcast over the last 29 weeks, and unfortunately, I just can't do it when we're recording the podcast for some reason. I don't know what it is, but I've just omitted them from the edits. And with that, it's time to move into our final burning question. Mike, are you ready?
Let's hit it, baby.
If you showed up as a supporting character in someone else's movie, how would people describe you?
Jesus Christ, man. That's a crazy question to just deliver with no opportunity to prepare.
What? You have no self-awareness?
Well, I mean, I'm trying to affect an air, at least a little bit here on this podcast.
An air of what?
I don't know.
Pomposity?
If I'm being honest, then I guess...
you can be dishonest. I'm not going to stop you.
Probably cheeky. A little bit annoying, well-dressed, but a bit effeminate, and cocksure. Those are the words I would use. What do you think? You think I'm pretty accurate?
Yeah, I can verify that Mike is being honest with the citizens of Niro Nation. Listen, I think that's a great answer.
Because I want to be honest, right? I mean, I just said 2 questions ago that I'm trying to be like a relatively honest version of myself here. So I don't want to make up some shit. Like, yeah, I think those would be the things.
Yeah, who do I think you would be if you were the supporting character in a film? I don't know. Maybe it'd be like an Office Space style film and you'd be like the coworker, like the middle manager who's like just a little too into their job and then the protagonist is like not really feeling it. And you're like, hey guys.
You know me. I do love work. Yeah.
Hey guys, don't forget Thursday is fun colored tie day.
Oh, yeah. When we used to go into the office, a couple of guys I work with and I, we had a little group who did tie Wednesdays. So it wasn't Thursday, but it was Wednesday. Yeah. So
it's disturbingly close. It was disturbingly close.
You were just off by a day. Yeah. Yeah. It was a good group of folks who did tie Wednesdays. It was a lot of fun. Yep.
Oh, God. I mean, for me, I think it's pretty simple. I think I'm just the supporting character, like quippy asshole who secretly has a heart of gold. Like the first 2 acts of the film, I'm the kind of character who's constantly running his mouth and making inopportune jokes. And then in the 3rd act, kind of towards the climax, I do something kind of positive or heartwarming where you go like, okay, like he was secretly a good guy all along. His brash exterior was just hiding the sensitive chocolatey interior, that hard-coated candy shell.
I agree with that. I think that's accurate.
There you go.
I buy that.
So with that being said, it's time for us to wrap this up. Mike, how'd you feel about this Mailbag Spectacular?
I thought the episode was great. I think that my favorite part was probably when we had President Barack Hussein Obama on the podcast. It really felt like, honestly, I was back listening to the Barack Obama Bruce Springsteen podcast, which is one of the only podcasts I've ever listened to.
Oh, there we go.
So there you go.
I never listened to that one. I just remember seeing the press releases about it.
Oh, it's nice. You should listen to it. There's only 6 episodes, so.
Oh, that's great. You imagine only doing a podcast for 6 episodes? How easy our lives would be.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I think that Barack Obama and Bruce Springsteen have all the money in the world, so I think they could do however many episodes they wanted, man. Bruce Springsteen is literally a billionaire.
Very true. Well, with that, I think it's time for us to wrap this wonderful digression from the usual format up. I want to thank all of the loyal citizens of Niro Nation who listen day in and day out, well, week in and week out, especially those who maybe they throw it on every day.
That, it's just 24/7. It's always playing.
We're at 30 episodes. You could throw one on every day. Who's going to stop you? Especially want to thank those who wrote in this week. It was great getting a chance to read and respond to your letters. Want to remind everyone to follow us on Letterboxd if you haven't yet. I'm Mike back at you, and he's Mike the Fab. Email us at ourherodeniro@gmail.com with your letters, and we'll, I don't know. Who knows how we're going to handle letters in the future.
Probably in about 10 weeks, yeah.
Rate us in Apple Podcasts or Spotify. We'd really appreciate that. Thank you, Caroline, for creating the podcast artwork. And we'll be back at you next week with a regular format episode about Shark Tale.
Thanks a lot, everybody. See you next week.